Hello, and welcome back to the Argyle CIO Leadership Forum. My name is Brittany Sullivan with Argyle, and it's great to have everyone joining us today. A couple of notes before I turn things over to our panel moderator. First, to ask questions throughout the session, simply type into the Q&A chat, and we will address your questions at the end of the session. Now, without further delay, I would love to introduce our moderator, Greg Jameson, best-selling author of Make Magic Happen with AI and Innovate and Learn and Earn. We are excited to have Greg and our panelists with us for a discussion titled AI Amplified, Effortless Integration for Enterprise Innovation. Welcome, Greg, and over to you.
Thanks, Brittany. It is truly an honor to be here today moderating this panel. I get to interact with some colleagues that I have recently met, and we have lots of questions that we want to address with you today. We're going to start out giving just a little bit of an introduction of each of ourselves. Brittany mentioned a few things about me. I actually live in Colorado, just outside of the Denver metro area. I have been working with artificial intelligence since the mid-1980s, where I wrote my first programs in what was the language of AI back then, which was Lisp. Over this time, I have worked with small solopreneurs all the way up to billion-dollar corporations, and I've written 29 different books. I write a weekly blog post, and AI is still my passion. So with that, Roth, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. Good morning, Greg and everybody else. My name is Roth Eddings. I've worked over the last couple of decades at Honeywell and HP and a lot of other big names. Started implementing AI, I'd say about 14 years ago, starting out with machine language and taking it to current day. Seen a lot of different environments, experience across the technology landscape, and I'm looking forward to the discussion.
Great. Tolgai.
Hi, my name is Tolgai Kizilelma. I have 3 decades of industry experience covering healthcare, higher education, state government, and private sector, obviously. I've done the IT in the first 15 years or so, and then transitioned to cybersecurity, governance, risk compliance, privacy aspects. I also am involved with various nonprofit organizations, one of which is the ISACA, and I'm the president of a couple of the nonprofits where I engage with community around education awareness activities, training activities. I do also work as the director of our business-focused MS in cybersecurity program, a graduate program, a 100% online program at the Dominican University of California, where I also teach governance, risk compliance courses. As another adjunct faculty, my involvement with AI really started around machine learning, where I teach data science courses at St. Mary's College here in the Bay Area. Thank you.
Awesome. And Hari.
Hi, everyone. I'm excited to be here. I have more than 2 decades of IT experience in product development and building solutions for the customers. And the last few years, I have been working with AI. My experience started with building a chatbot with AI for a business problem, and then eventually leveraging on AI to build products. And I'm a keen practitioner of leveraging on the AI as part of the technical architecture, solving real business problems and building strategies. And yeah, I'm great to be here. Thanks.
Awesome. So as everyone can see, we've got a lot of experience here on the panel today, and we are going to go into kind of a deep dive onto some of these questions. The first one is, how do you balance AI-driven automation with compliance, security, and government requirements? Tolgai, why don't we start with you?
Sure. I really think it all starts with learning, especially with AI. Now, it's not a technology what we're used to, so it's a new technology. So ongoing learning, I think, is very, very important for all levels of the workforce. But that said, of course, there are certain basic. We need to start at the top, right? Strategy, making sure we know where we're going. So governance is really an important element. So establishing AI governance policy is really important. especially where we can kind of turn into existing framework standards like ISO 42001 and NIST AI risk framework, so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? There's so much learning required anyway. RACI, like roles, responsibilities, how we define ownership, accountability, those type of things are really important, depending on the different levels in the organization, from managers, directors, all the C-levels, executives, where we define who's going to do what, and also that race matrix is very, very critical, so that we're moving in the right direction and making sure things are getting done timely. Of course, this is a multiple departments are involved. This is not an IT thing, right? It's not a cyber, it's not an IT, it's just multiple departments. It's the whole organization covering the end-to-end aspect of the enterprise. So that's why we want representation. We want to make sure AI, there's a review board, an ethics review board, for example, so that we cover and look at the issue from different angles, so that each department is bringing the issues, evaluating potential risk and biases that exist, legal implication, all those things. Compliance obviously is important. We definitely need to have the by design aspect. What I mean is security by design, privacy by design. In today's environment, those are things we have to do now. In the past, we were saying, oh yeah, it's kind of good to have kind of a thing, especially by design. But now with the AI, that's really a must. We have to do the by design properly, done it right. Because of the assurance component, we need to have the proper audit trails so that we can have that proper conformance assurance and make sure that things are in balance, right? Regarding AI, how things work, the model explainability is really important from a compliance perspective. Security, as I mentioned, in today's technological landscape, there's always a technology component, infrastructure, IT systems, and we want to make sure we have a baseline security controls. And it might be maybe a zero trust, right, where we are addressing identity, device management, endpoint, applications, and network. So those things have to be done, right? If you're going to take advantage and if we're going to optimize the outcome of AI-related components, AI-related projects, we really need to address those properly. Of course, there's that human element. We cannot just automate everything. Now we're talking about agentic AI, where they basically orchestrate everything through the agents and talking with MCP servers and making decisions, right, getting the right information, everything. But humans still have to be there as part of the oversight function. And so human in the loop is really, really important. And overall, it's really make sure you have the right people doing the right things in the right way, and that you can audit. And traceability is really important. AI, there's this unknown aspect, so you have to think about the transparency and make sure you have visibility to the whole technical environment, so that you really know what we're implementing, what we're getting, and that alignment with strategy. That's really what I'm going to provide as an overall arching around governance and how we put AI into good use, so that we are really optimizing the associated risk. We're really optimizing the use of limited resources. And by doing that, of course, we have to do it in a compliant manner with the existing laws and regulations.
Yeah, you mentioned a couple of things in there that I'm sure we're going to hit on more as we go through this. But one was how AI is not just an IT department issue, it's really the entire organization. And when we're talking about governance, it's not just legal compliance necessarily, it might be governance within the organization itself. And then I'm sure we're going to touch more on agentic AI as we go through these questions. But Harry, do you have anything you want to add to the question about balancing AI automation with compliance, security, and governance?
Yes, I think one key thing is I want to paraphrase what you mentioned already is that AI is not an IT project. It has to be top down. Leadership has to believe in it, and investing some money and building a team is not going to solve the problem. It has to be strategically how where we are fitting in. It is a top down approach is works very well for the success of AI implementation, and the security compliance and building the standards around AI ethics, how you use it, what to use, what not to use, and yeah, building an organization level, as Tolga mentioned, there are already established standards and adopting them in the context of the particular business problem of an enterprise, and building their own, like, standards on the AI ethics will certainly help.
Actually, Greg, there's one more thing I forgot to mention now that Hare kind of touched on it. I think there's this alignment, right? We talk about strategic alignment, this pyramid at the top, but there's also a bit more important alignment where we have, at the corporate level, we have corporate governance, corporate risk management, right? Corporate everything. And then we have IT risk governance, risk management, all those things at the lower levels. So the alignment of those policies, right, at the corporate level and the lower levels and all together is really important.
Yeah. Do you have anything to add on this question, Ross?
I'll just say a couple of words about those last few comments because I think that they're really important. What was touched on in terms of alignment and governance. I think depending on the organization, that alignment takes a couple of different forms. And so as my peers were talking, I was thinking about a conversation I had in the airport 2 weeks ago, where Honeywell has named a chief AI officer. And he's a friend of mine. I've known him for a while. And so we got into this conversation and he was explaining his role to me. And while he is, qualified technically to do that job, as he explained his role, it wasn't a technical job at all. It was really around the two things that Harry and Tolgay were talking about. He was going across the organization, talking to, legal, talking to the business units more specifically, right? And saying, what are you already doing? As we roll out tools and process change, what does that governance need to look like and who needs to play in those conversations?
Yeah, so it sounds like we're all in agreement that it's not an IT issue here. It's a enterprise-wide issue of when we're implementing AI, that everybody has to be involved from the top down. So what have you seen work when modernizing legacy systems to support AI without disrupting mission critical operations? And I'll let you start with that one, Roth.
Sure. I think the most important thing to call out here is parallelism. And the other thing that Tolgay touched on was human in the loop. And so, what I've seen work really well is when companies get those two things right. Especially for the last 2.5 years or so, everybody's kind of jumping off the AI cliff, and the technologists know, and some of the seasoned business professionals as well, is, there's nothing worse than giving a wrong answer to a customer. And so I think that takes two flavors, right? Number one is human in the loop to, really check answers and do thorough testing systems of customer facing software. And internally, it's human in the loop, as we are implementing RPA and or, agentic AI systems that allow humans to double check, the answers that we're passing on internally. And that really is, the biggest thing. And when I say parallelism, that could be, time frame is in some cases irrelevant, because you really want to see that the new systems are producing the same and similar answers to your tried and true. And that's where I've seen the biggest success, right? And then the other part of that is a lot more technical is, modern architecture. I think sometimes we live under the delusion that everybody's built their systems post 2015. And in the environments I've been, that's just not really true. Everybody is not fully cloud ready. Everybody is not fully running microservices, right? And even in the most adept organizations, there's always pockets of systems and data that play very critical roles. And so I think coming back to system architecture and understanding what you have and where you're going is critically important. I feel like I've said a lot, and I'll let my other two panelists kind of comment on that.
Yeah, and I think a couple of the things that you said in there, obviously the human in the loop aspect is something that it is mission critical, and it is something that even as you're building agentic AI systems and you're having the agentic AI systems tie into different legacy systems, which is obviously technically possible to do that, that the humans are still responsible for whatever the answers are that are being generated. We like to think that the AI can produce these answers for us, and they may or may not be right. So having that human balance is really critical. What are your thoughts on that, Harry?
I see that AI responds as a more of a fiduciary, but they are acting on our behalf. But end of the day, we are responsible for it. And yeah, from a modernization perspective, the way I see is that there is a more like as a organizationally, we built a complacent systems in place, maybe processes or teams, structure, and adapting to AI is the biggest challenge is to break that inertia. People acceptance. It is very easy to invest a lot of money, like run a big project for multi-year projects and then fail, right? That is actually easy part, right? The hard part is that how do we build a strategy, and make sure that everybody understands it and plan for micro wins, right? Don't do whole thing, like we don't need to boil the ocean at once, do in branches, and how we organize it will lead us to success. And there is no way to fail because you always correct it. If we think that something went wrong, you correct it and do it, and you don't need to realize it after a year or 2 years of investment.
Yeah, and there's kind of a sub question to this whole thing about how do we manage technical debt that slows down AI integration? Tolga, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, actually, before we jump onto that, I think as we're talking about the legacy, we always, well, mostly focus on systems and technology, right? But there's also, like we talk about people, process, technology, there's legacy on people and process too. And when I mean like people, right, we talk about human in the loop. We want to make sure part of the governance structure, maybe that's something I should have addressed. We want to provide the education, training, awareness, all those things to the people. And we in the current workforce we have like 4 or 5 different generations, so we want to make sure we are addressing the people element at different levels so that each workforce member, they have the right skills needed so that they're not considered a legacy, right? The people, same thing goes for processes. Before we can go and move forward, even with the pilots, right, the use cases, that phased approach, we want to make sure we have a streamlined process, the workflows. Are we ready? The assessment, the readiness assessment, we need to go through those things. So that's how we can really start moving forward, because those things will dictate how successful or how to what degree of optimization we're going to be getting, the value optimization we get from these AI efforts. Now, coming back to the legacy, the technology, we can't solve today's problems using yesterday's technology, right? We all know that, but we need to focus on that. As I mentioned, zero trust. So whatever the terms, concepts, we need to really have a baseline security, make sure we have the right use cases, the pilots. But there's a bit of that overlap between the legacy technology, the latest technology, and how we integrate those two things together. And a phased approach will definitely be, very valuable. But at the same time, we want to think about, this is really the outcome of this phase small pilot is good, but can we scale? Can we get the same benefits if we kind of go and enterprise wide at the same level? And that requires time, preparation, education, training, awareness.
Yeah. So on to the next question here about what metrics best demonstrate the business value of AI integration to executive leadership. And I think one of the things that we're going to touch on here is the fact that if we're not already integrating AI, our employees probably are, unless we have specific policies in place that say you're not allowed to do it, and maybe they're going ahead and doing it anyway. But we need to measure the business value of AI to the executive leadership, and what's the best way to do that? So, Tolga, why don't you start with that?
Sure. I look at it from there's this thing called out there a balanced scorecard, right? That focuses on financial, operational, customer innovation. We definitely should add to that risk and compliance. So that's how we can slice and dice and how we kind of look at these metrics. Definitely financial impact is important. It shows how AI might be contributing directly to revenue growth, cost savings, or profit margin. So that's really important, dollars. And there are a lot of metrics around it. And we can, again, for each industry, it might be different. But at the end of the day, the return on investment. So we have all these AI initiatives. How do we prioritize? How do we really, with the use of business use cases, what do we get out of these efforts, the return on investment? So that really is important, that financial quantification. How much are we saving, right, annually? Cost reduction is another area. For example, the easiest way is, most of us now use chatbots, right, for customer service. If you do customer service chatbots in place in production, what is the outcome of that? How much money are we saving annually because we're now using chatbots? That's important. The other thing to look at is from an operational efficiency perspective. There are different models, different metrics. Maybe another one is like, because we have so much data content from a productivity efficiency perspective. When we look at all these documentation, like contracts, for example, legal, right, procurement, how much time are we saving? Because now we use AI, the contract reviews, that legal jargon, right? Is that from weeks to days, hours? What is that? So that might be another. Customer satisfaction, customer experience, right? Very important. One of the balanced scorecard quadrants. Customer satisfaction, customer retention. If customers connect with us, right, for addressing issues, pain points. What's that contact resolution? That first contact resolution, is it 60%, 70% out of the time, right? We solve their problems with their first contact. That's a good metric, for example. And of course, there are risk compliance governance metrics we need to take into account. That's all. At the end of the day, we need to work in these legal boundaries, and it is important. But innovation is another area. How are we using AI, and what are we getting throughout different departments, the adoption rate? If you look at the enterprise, how many departments do we have? How many divisions do we have? And what is the AI adoption? You mentioned about the shadow AI, right? So that's another thing. Now, 60, 70, 80% of all of our departments, are they using enterprise AI that we put into production? So what is it, right? So there are a lot of metrics. Knowing the industry is important. Knowing your strategy is important. That alignment we keep mentioning is important. And looking at it from these different angles so that you have the right metrics that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that you're saying there is that I see so often is people are in fact trying to figure out how much time are we saving, how much money are we saving, and even how many employees can we lay off. Whereas another way to look at the whole AI implementation is how can we generate entirely new revenue streams with AI and measure that. Maybe rather than downsizing, we need to be upsizing because of the fact that we are implementing AI. So there's a lot of aspects of this when we're trying to figure out the metrics and how we're going to measure those. What are your thoughts on the whole way to utilize metrics to demonstrate business value to executives, Roth?
I think you touch on an interesting point when you talk about revenue. That really, sparked a thought in my mind. Because for me, in my experience, I've seen just very different paths, I guess, for lack of a better term, right? I've seen companies that are utilizing AI for revenue generation, and that's baked into the product, right? Or products. And then, obviously there's the, there's the bottom line effect. And I think two things about those, right? I think from a bottom line effect, one of the things I found is not so much IT, and definitely not departments like manufacturing or logistics. And I only say that because my bias is that those three departments have a very good handle on their people cost and their efficiency cost per person. And one of the things that, I ran into last year was as we began rolling out AI across departments outside of that, justifying the numbers that we came up with. First of all, the numbers are astronomical. But getting people to believe these astronomical numbers about the man hours saved, it's a tough sell. I think it's still a tough sell. And so back on the revenue side, You said it, and I don't need to continue on. I think using a lot of the metrics that are already in place to manage your business are the best way to do it, frankly. Right? What is your man hour cost? What is your people cost? What is your revenue? And being able to drill down into those macro categories to find the micro reasons. How did AI drive our business change? Right?
Yep. Awesome. So, Harry, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, I want to add one additional dimension from particularly for a leadership perspective. It is not about seeing what is done below, like having a dashboard where I'm looking at metrics but more on the prescriptive metrics, where like AI, leveraging an AI, what we can do, right? And those give you insights into some thought process. End of the day, it is the leaders of the organization that need to own it, and whether to do things or to take that and consider that input or not. So that I feel that that is going to be very, very often we can, like, we always look at the team below and how they are doing, what they are doing, like, and you always look at it, but we don't apply that to ourselves. And I feel that is one key thing. And you touched base a little bit on the layoffs part, which is actually I think organizations are trying to practice it and see quick savings. And when you can't increase revenue, like, you see that cost is reduced, and I feel that is kind of a negative thing to do, unless are you ready in a doomsday? Like, do you have people to take care of it, not just leveraging an existing workforce? But then I think you also, Greg, you mentioned about increasing new streams of revenue. How we can actually leverage an AI, use existing workforce, and maybe open up new revenue streams. And how can you exploit the market? I think that will be a good thought, and yeah, it certainly can help there. But looking at the short-term wins and cutting down on the workforce, will we will have to pay for it later, because you will lose domain knowledge, you will lose the skills that are trained, and and getting a replacement in the future is going to be very difficult.
Yep. So, what strategies help you avoid tools prowl and ensure interoperability across the AI stack? Roth, I'll let you start with that.
Sure. I mean, the key word there goes back to governance, right? And so, I think governance and collaboration. The world of SaaS has made it, far easier for, the average employee to, either go to a website or install something, but it's more, SaaS. They just go to Chat GPT and Gemini and all the other tools and start putting stuff in. And I think in the same boat, you can, with a little bit of research, you can go find something that really helps you do your job and buy it and export a bunch of data and be off and running. Right. And so while I hate blocking, I do think that there's an aspect of that, that needs to occur in some organizations, and it's a challenging task for sure. And then the second half of that is good governance, good collaboration. And the last thing I'll say is I think acknowledging, where we are in the technology life cycle. These tools are very valuable. People are going to use them. And so getting out in front of your organization from a leadership perspective and saying, this is our roadmap and these are the things that you can do and are allowed. And, but you just kind of got to go through the process is the right thing to do. At the last organization I was at, Axon, they were very forward facing and just took that governance into account. And so, the bureaucracy around utilizing software products wasn't taboo. It was encouraged. And that led, the organization at all levels to bring their thoughts and their ideas forward and manage them, as opposed to, putting their head in the sand and which we know will just cause people to do whatever they're going to do anyway.
Yeah. I think that as part of the whole thing with interoperability, we talked earlier about agentic AI, and I think that agents can actually help with that aspect too, being able to work with different aspects of the legacy systems and make them operate with each other. But what other strategies have you seen to help with avoiding tools prowl and ensuring interoperability, Hari?
I believe, yeah, the tool set at organization level, it is always better to limit like what tools, like building a strategy around it. Okay, I'm going to use, say, Copilot or use some other tool, and what tools we use and how do you use it, and building regulations. So I think putting all the tools in place is going to be difficult. It creates more mess than it can solve. So yeah, my recommendation would be to limit, try out something, tools, try different tools, and what works for your organization, stick to it and work on it, as we go forward.
You have any thoughts on this, Tolgai?
I actually do. I think there are a couple of points I really want to emphasize about the tool interoperability, or how we use existing IT operations. I see there's a question embedding new AI capabilities. This is very similar to like a couple of hundred years ago. We went through this transition already. Like we went through horse carriages to cars, not even the EVs, right? Electric cars, just regular cars. So there was a transition. What we're going through is similar. We're going through a transition. And think about risk and compliance, all those things. Think about the potential opportunities, job opportunities. Today we're questioning, will we lose jobs? Right, AI is coming, and the same question was there back then. Is the drivers doing the horse carriages, they lost their jobs. But then think about all the potential of the car industry, the roadways, the highways, all the different opportunities. Of course, there's ongoing learning. You have to learn, right? You have to learn how to drive, and that's what you have to do. So interoperability, I think it all starts where you want to see, knowing we're going through this transition. Maybe let's say a good 5 years, for example. It might happen sooner. But where do you want to see your enterprise at the end of the 5 year? So your strategic goals and objectives is very important, so that that's the target. That's where you want to be, right? And then know where you are today, so that you do that current gap assessment. What skills do we need, right? And how do we need to go through these transitions? And in 5 years, just like those horse carriages, in time, there's a given window, they became obsolete, right? Because of this transition, the highways and everything, it was all 100% car focused. I think I don't know the timeline, maybe 5 years, maybe 10 years, this traditional IT infrastructure that we have where we're focusing will be obsolete, because everything will be AI focused. So there's this transition. So in the meantime, there's this VUCA thing, right? The volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, that concept, VUCA. So that also helps us. The AI helps us with that. How we make changes in this VUCA world, right? When things change up and down, when we don't know, when we cannot predict, because we make plans next day, next hour, something changes in the what we call the PESTEL element, the political, economical, social, technological, environmental, and legal, especially in the geopolitical environment. Things change so quickly. How do you adjust these? So I say be very cautious. Don't make radical changes, obviously, because technology is changing so rapidly. Things are changing in the business landscape. But at the same time, you have to have a roadmap. You have to really address that strategic objectives and have a roadmap. Make sure you have the right people. Education, awareness, training is very important. We should be a part of that. Thank you.
Okay, so we are going to run short on time. We have one more regular question, and we've got a whole slew of questions coming in from the audience, which is fantastic. So I'm going to ask that we keep our answers fairly short here. And I may only call on one of you as we go through this. But the final prepared question that we have is, what practical steps help prepare hybrid and multi-cloud environments for AI adoption? And Harry, I'll let you start with that.
Sure. So hybrid possibly is the way to go for most organizations, though we want to make everything cloud native and not have anything on-prem, but compliance, regulatory requirements, your concerns about, data, your customers' data, certainly may lead to having, you may still continue having your on-prem servers and your own deployments or private cloud. And then for operational efficiency and the uh, getting better metrics and analytics out of the data, you do need to use the cloud. And again, when it comes to the cloud, like there could be, I think multi-cloud is kind of a default thing, how we will eventually end up with, maybe some cloud provider is very good with databases, other is very exceptionally good for the generative AI. And then, and like, so there is always going to be mix and match. But my suggestion would be not to do the same thing with multiple clouds just because you want to do multi-cloud. Evaluate, and it has to be part of a bigger strategy. And then how the data is connected, how you are able to extract the best out of your on-prem and the cloud data is where you need to really build your enterprise strategy about it. It should not be a technical, again, like it not a pure technical solution, but it should be a well thought why you are doing and what benefits you are getting, what is it, optimization you are aiming for.
Okay. Roth, do you have anything that you want to add on practical steps to prepare for this?
Yeah, I do. My opinion's a little different than Harry's this time. Took 7 questions, so that's pretty good. But I think the most practical step is to, not put all your eggs in one basket. Is to do a fair amount of, beyond experimentation where you've got tools running in different environments. And the only other thing that I'd add to that is is ensuring your data strategy. And on that part, we agree, right? Whether you're using, doesn't matter what database tool you're using, but ensuring your data strategy. And again, it's not technical. It's, our ingress comes here and then it goes there, and our ultimate, data lake and data storage pipeline facilities sit here. And that's where all things flow in, and all things flow out. And that's, obviously a lot harder than it sounds. But
Great. So let's jump into some of the audience questions. The first one is, how can teams strike the right balance between maintaining existing IT operations and embedding new AI capabilities? And Tolga, I'll let you address that.
Well, I think we touched on it slightly. First, it's not the IT. It's not, those teams, operations who need to make that decision, right? That needs to come from top down, so that based on the strategy, based on the short term, midterm, long term. Otherwise, it's like security making decisions. Again, it's part of the corporate, right? The data governance, the corporate enterprise governance, risk governance at the highest level, and then at the lower levels. I think one critical thing that we keep emphasizing because of this, and there were some questions about it, the VUCA world that I mentioned before, the volatility, uncertainty, ambiguity, and complexity. We're going to go through this window of, let's say, the next 5 years. We had VUCA in the past. But with AI now, because we talked about data, right? And data is all important. We need to make sure the quality of data, because AI is all 100% dependent on the data. So we want to make sure the intrinsic values, the quality, contextual, as well as the security aspects, the life cycle of data, it's all at it's like the baseline stuff, right? We need to deal with those, part of the assessment, part of the readiness. We need to clean our house first before we do anything, right? Even with the pilots, that's important. So when we have the existing and this what's coming, right? And we see what's potential, what's possible, but the use case is one thing, and when you kind of expand it to scale and the enterprise, that's another thing. So that's why a slow phased approach is really important. A skill set, right? We talk about what are we going to do with the people? Upskilling, as I mentioned, from horse carriages to cars, there's a huge list of opportunities out there which we don't even know yet. So we need to start thinking of those potential opportunities, because our existing workforce, what they have, right, the AI doesn't have, is the experience. I mean, think about all the people you have in your organization, that cultural knowledge, experience, because they've been there for so long, 10 years, 20, whatever, the collective knowledge. How can you use that? So I think knowing the strategy is important. There are critical efforts you might have in the pipeline. Maybe you started. Make sure to address them. The third party alignment vendor, because again we mentioned, right, this cloud thing. Now everything is outsourced. We have this reliance and dependence on the third parties. So make sure you have a good third party risk assessment, relationship, trust, all those things, so that you are relying, you're getting the benefits from them, and then come up with a plan. But ongoing learning is what I'm going to tell as the last word. Thank you.
Okay. In lieu of the time, I'm going to kind of combine a question here from the audience, that being, with AI expanding across the enterprise, how can companies maintain strong security and compliance standards? And along with that, how can we best stay innovative without sacrificing security? Roth, you want to address that?
Sure. So innovative without sacrificing security. I think that that is the primarily the job of leadership management, is give your people a place to play, give them a safe, secure playground, and just tying that back into the last question. While it is a management responsibility to kind of drive the overall direction, as an IT professional, this is not new. 15 years ago, actually maybe less, everybody was headed towards the cloud. And today, how do I say, run-of-the-mill systems administrators are largely aged out. I forgot the word I wanted to use, right? And the same is true of COBOL programmers. Yes, while there are still some companies out there running COBOL code, it's always our responsibility as technologists to be looking forward and finding our own way to learn and to play and to stay current. Right, that's the job. I've been in this job as long as you guys, or a long time, and that's always the job.
All right, we're going to do one more question, trying to wrap this up here in the next couple of minutes, and that is, what lessons have you learned about aligning IT, data, and business teams throughout the AI adoption journey? And Harry, you want to address that?
The way I want to see is that, the key ingredient of AI success is acceptance, right? It falls back into the previous question too, is that, is your existing team comfortable with it? Now when you start bringing new changes, people are worried about their jobs and all that, and that actually, like, it won't show up explicitly, right? If the direction is coming from the top, people don't say no, and rather, like, they make sure it fails. So it is important that leadership actually understand this and make sure that the urgency is understood by all stakeholders in the team. I could be CEO, then I may be failing my initiative because nobody bought that idea, right? So yeah, I mean, I think, I'm looking from that perspective, Greg. The success always depends on how critically, like, everybody is aligned into it, and then make incremental progress. Make sure that your measurable progress is required, and everybody should see the benefit, and then that makes everybody happy, and we will be successful too.
Great. We have almost exactly 1 minute left. Does anybody have anything that they want to add about what we've discussed here in general today?
Yeah. Craig, I'll just mention one thing. This overall success is defined. We want to do the right things in the right way, and that is change management, right, and project management. But more so the change management. It involves people, process, technology. Has different leadership components, cultural elements, and there are a lot of frameworks out there, right? And some people can look for it. But we have to do the change management properly, so that people know why we're doing what we're doing, how we're doing, so that they're part of the process.
Great. Well, this has been an absolute blast to have this discussion with you guys. I am going to turn it back to Brittany Sullivan at this time, and appreciate everybody joining us today.
Excellent. Well, thank you all so much for such an insightful panel discussion. I also want to thank everyone else for joining us today. This session, along with all of today's content, will be made available on demand following the event. And our next session will begin shortly at 12:25 Eastern, which will be a keynote titled The CIO's Playbook for Risk, Resilience, and Business Growth. Please click on the join button that will appear on your screen to be redirected, and we look forward to seeing you there. Thank you all so much again.